Get ready for an all-new Rob on the Road. Planes, trains, and automobiles. We'll take flight back in time.
Just look at that, the Aerospace Museum of California, massive planes everywhere.
Plus, walk through the doors of the past at the California State Railroad Museum and see how tracks laid a new foundation for the West. And later in the show, we'll take you out to the California Automobile Museum. Rob on the Road, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles starts now.
It's Rob on the Road, discovering the stories that capture the unique spirit of Northern California. Here's KVIE's Rob Stewart.
Northern California is home to rich and deep history that really celebrates transportation. So let's hit the road, have a little fun, and learn a lot about this area's moving museums. We begin by taking flight. Well, we're taking you inside the Aerospace Museum of California. This place is filled with more than 40 aircraft, as well as hundreds of pieces of memorabilia. Here's the curator, Barry Bauer. Good to see you, Barry.
Nice to meet you.
You're checking out an amazing piece of aircraft here. Tell me about this.
Well, this is the oldest aircraft that we have in the museum. It's a 1932 Curtiss-Wright B-14B. Only two of them were built. One of them crashed in 1934, so you are looking at the one and only.
Well, it's amazing that this is a one-of-a-kind aircraft as well as a piece of artwork, in my opinion. This place is full of them, so let's go check it out.
All right.
Okay. Barry, look at this plane. Tell me about this one. It is absolutely beautiful.
Well, this is a Fairchild PT-19B, a training aircraft, often called the Cradle of Eagles.
Why?
Because during the Second World War, almost every Army Air Force pilot at one point or another flew in his training process. So hundreds of thousands of pilots learned to fly in this type of aircraft.
That's amazing. And when would this plane have been used? From what years?
This aircraft was used for training in the military from about 1940 through the end of the Second World War. Just as the war ended, jets were coming into service and they needed jet trainers instead of the old-fashioned propeller types.
I bet you have some volunteers here that actually flew.
We have a number of guys that look at this fondly and remember their days as they were a cadet learning to fly.
Well, there's so much to see. I'm excited, so let's go.
All right.
And this really is how this place comes alive. This is volunteer Lee Wilner here, refinishing what? What is this, Barry?
This is a Cessna UC-78 training aircraft from the Second World War era. Every piece of this will be eventually refurbished, restored to look like new. The skilled craftsmen working here will be on this for years.
Well, the craftsmanship is just unbelievable looking at this. It's really shocking.
It is amazing to look at this and see those tiny little pieces of wood just glued and tacked together with tiny brads. When it's all formed together and covered with fabric and the skin is on there, binds it all together, and it does become a thing that can lift people into the air and fly around in the sky. It's amazing when you see how this thing was built.
Is this a dying art?
Absolutely so. The new generation is not using wood and fabric anymore. They're composite plastics, new metals, foam, stuff like that is now what aircraft are made of. So skilled craftsmen like Lee are a dying breed, and we value them immensely.
This is so cool. Look at this cockpit. What year is this from?
This is from the early 1940s, maybe 1942, 43 at the latest.
And being brought back to life.
Piece by skilled craftsmen that have a real intense desire to see their history preserved and restored.
Absolutely.
Now back it up, watch that wing to the on this side. You got plenty on this one.
Barry, this is a U.S. Navy plane from when?
This is from the 60s and 70s. This is actually an A-4 attack plane. This is the exact type of aircraft that Senator John McCain was shot down over North Vietnam.
Really?
Yes, he was flying one of these at the time. But this one is painted, obviously, in a special color scheme, the markings of the U.S. Navy's flight demonstration team, the Blue Angels.
Blue Angels,
They
yes.
flew this aircraft, this type of aircraft, for a very short period during the 70s. And we acquired an example from the Navy, flying their colors, so to speak, as a special exhibit here at the museum.
My grandmother was in the Navy.
See, we have a connection with almost everybody in the area.
I bet you do, I bet you do. We have to talk about this jacket and the significance of it, Barry. It really is important.
Well, I hope your viewers are aware of the Tuskegee Airmen, the first African Americans to fly and fight for the United States during the Second World War. They fought, as they say, against two enemies, the Nazis and racial prejudice here in the United States.
Can we talk about civil rights leaders?
Absolutely. These folks were at the forefront during the Second World War. This jacket was donated by Mrs. Edith Roberts, a resident here of Sacramento. Her husband, George, and his nickname was Spanky, George Spanky Roberts, was one of the first 5 graduates of the Tuskegee Airmen program back in 1942.
Because there were thousands.
There were many thousands during the course of the war. By the end of the war, they had equipped 4 squadrons of combat aircraft for service overseas.
And here we have an exhibit about the moon. And tell me about this little Charlie Brown doll.
This Charlie Brown doll was a very special artifact for us. It was presented by the astronauts from Apollo 10. They were the ones just before the first moon landing. They actually circled the moon, had this Charlie Brown doll with them in their capsule, brought it back to Earth after getting within 9 miles of the moon, and presented it to General Samuel Phillips, the director of the Apollo program.
My goodness. And I see you have some really cool things hanging from the ceiling.
Well, let's go upstairs and take a look.
All right, let's go. What a cool view when you come upstairs.
Isn't it, though?
It's really, I mean, those planes outside, it's just breathtaking. What is this blue thing right here?
This small blue aircraft is an unmanned, a pilotless drone built by a company here in Sacramento, Composite Engineering Incorporated. It is used as a target drone by the Navy, by the Air Force, to train people in shooting things down with missiles.
Built right here in Sacramento. And
yes, sir.
Aerojet?
Also in the Sacramento area, Aerojet has been building rocket motors and engines in Rancho Cordova for over 50 years.
Wow, so there is a huge impact in this area when it comes to aerospace.
Still, yes.
Still alive and well. We got to get outside. I tell you, I look at that view and it's just so pretty over there. So let's take a journey. This is massive and impressive out here. More than 30 planes at the Aerospace Museum of California outside.
We are very proud of our collection, and it's growing all the time. We acquire new aircraft from time to time, a couple a year.
Well, that's great. There's a one in the back that holds a place in history.
Oh, yes.
I'd like to go see it.
Sure.
This plane is historic. Tell me why, Barry.
This is a Grumman F-14 Tomcat. Most of you probably know it from the movie Top Gun.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing movie. Really stoked the interest in this type of aircraft in naval aviation. This particular aircraft, this F-14 was the very last one to make a takeoff from an aircraft carrier. It flew off of the Theodore Roosevelt in the Persian Gulf back in 2005, flew back to the States, flew right here to McClellan in Sacramento.
Really?
And was handed over to the museum.
The very last one to take
flight. The very
flight.
last one to take flight from an aircraft carrier was this bird itself.
So how'd you get it?
Through contacts. We had one of our board members was a naval aviator, and he knew people, he talked to people. We got in contact with the Museum of Naval Aviation in Pensacola, Florida, and said, we'd like a Tomcat. And here she is.
And you got it. Look at this U.S. Air Force plane. It is absolutely huge. Tell me about it.
This is a Lockheed C-121. It's an electronic warfare or observation aircraft. Has the huge antennas on the top and the bottom. For many, many years, almost 2 decades, it flew patterns off the coast, the west coast of the United States and the east coast as well, watching for Soviet aircraft or missiles coming in. Those are radar sets that were manned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for over 20 years.
And it's so neat how you can get right up and close to these planes. I mean, where else can you do this?
That's one thing about this museum that sets it aside from others, that we want people up close. We want them in and under the planes. We want them looking around, touching to a degree, but we want people to experience them. And you can't do that behind a barricade.
This one's from the Air Force, and you can actually get right inside.
Yes, we keep 3 aircraft open. Any day that we're open, you'll be able to come inside this one and a couple of others to see what it's like in one of these warbirds from 40, 50, 60 years ago.
Can we get in the cockpit?
Sure, go ahead.
Let's go. We're here in the cockpit. How cool is that?
Isn't it amazing to think that people flew these things, carried cargo all around the world for 30, 40 years in this type of aircraft?
And this one's getting ready to get a major overhaul.
Yes, we've received a grant from the federal government to restore a number of our aircraft, and this one is going to get overhauled, completely restored inside and out to pristine condition.
Because you said they're national treasures.
Absolutely true. They are irreplaceable. They tell a story, a part of our nation's history that cannot be lost, and these sit outside. So we're going to do everything we can to bring this back to showroom condition here in the next year or so.
You know, I want to ask you, because you're really leaving behind a big legacy here. You, as the curator, get to design how things are laid out here. Why? Why do you do this? What is your story?
Well, I was born into an Air Force family. My father was a career enlisted man in the Air Force. I grew up around aircraft. I love the history of aircraft. And this is a place where I can not only delve deeply into it, but I can leave behind, as you say, I leave behind a legacy through exhibits telling the stories of these aircraft, but more importantly, the people of the Sacramento area that were involved with these aircraft. And it's a huge, huge story to tell.
And you're helping to keep that heritage and history alive.
That's my calling.
All right, Barry, well, it's good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. Barry Bauer here at the Aerospace Museum of California.
Stay with us for a golden opportunity celebrating the railroad and the West. And later, we'll take you to the amazing California Automobile Museum for a cruise back in time.
And here we are inside the California State Railroad Museum with Museum Director Paul Hammond. Hey, Paul.
Hey, Rob.
Good to see you. Thank you for having us here. Boy, this is a popular place. Group after group keeps pouring in.
Well, it is. This is North America's most popular railroad museum, and as you can see, there's a lot of good reasons why. It's a great place, and we've got a lot of fourth graders in particular learning about California history.
Well, talk about California history. This place really does showcase really what helped the West become the West, correct?
If you think about California entering the Union in 1850, and you think about the kind of transportation that existed, there wasn't a way to get from here to there quick. The railroad is the means that overcomes time and space. By 1869, it's possible to get to California all the way from the East Coast in 10 days or less. That's big.
And how did what we see behind us have a role in that? What is this?
Well, this is actually the very first locomotive of the Transcontinental Railroad.
Wow.
It broke ground right here in what's today Old Sacramento, just about 2 blocks away from where we're standing today at the foot of K Street. This locomotive was part of the construction machinery, and of course that crew then proceeded to build up into Donner Pass over the Sierra. It was a very long and arduous process because that was the wilderness, which is what this gallery is all about. You're overcoming the wilderness. Railroading was a technology that was already well known, but nobody had ever tried to build a railroad under quite these conditions over quite this terrain.
Well, this place is 250,000 square feet, 2.5 acres, filled with artifacts that'll really take your breath away. So we got a lot to see. Let's go do it. Welcome to the Great Hall. The last room was about building California. You say this is about transforming California.
Yes. Now that we've got the Transcontinental Railroad built, we've seen that. This is about that incredible transformation of time and space, whereas you were taking a wagon or a stagecoach or maybe a sailing ship that could take you months to get to California.
Now you got passenger cars.
Now you got passenger cars. There still are not dining cars, sleeping cars, things we recognize today. These are coaches, and that was standard. But oh my gosh, what a change from what you had gone through before, where you might not even ever make it alive.
I can't imagine the transformation. And over here we have these beautiful passenger cars. Although they were basic at the time, they're still very beautiful now.
Basic, but if you will, they're Victorian architecture set up in a railroad environment, rolling along on wheels. So they have all that fine striping. You've got lovely woodworking, painted ceilings. It's an incredible array of decor. We wouldn't consider it terribly comfortable today, but it's really beautiful.
Well, that's what surprises me the most. You know, I'd never been in here before this. And just to see the beauty and the craftsmanship that was put in to these pieces of art, these trains, is astonishing.
It's not entirely by accident, but you really have to sort of get out of where you are today looking at these and consider what they really meant then. These
Yes.
are transforming artifacts of the Industrial Revolution. The very locomotives are painted up so intricately with gold leaf and other things that we wonder today, why did they bother? But you really had the engines of change for the Industrial Revolution. You had these symbols of progress, and America as a nation was embracing the railroad as its transforming cultural icon.
Very interesting. That explains the beauty, and this place is full of it. And welcome to the 20th century steam engine. We've moved from the intricacies and the beauty to power and speed, right?
Absolutely. This locomotive is from the early 1920s.
Okay.
And unlike those earlier locomotives we've been looking at, this is technology, progressing, the size of the boiler, the pressure of the steam, the speed capabilities. Those locomotives we were looking at earlier perhaps could go 30, 35 as a top speed. This one's meant to be going 80, 90, sustained speed running. It was specifically built to cross the Nevada desert once you'd gotten over Donner Pass.
So you get over and...
Exactly. So this was a passenger locomotive, and it is the size of drivers in steam technology. You don't have gears per se like we're used to in our automobile. So the size of the wheels computes to the ability to go faster. And it's kind of amazing, though, to think about all of this machinery moving at those kinds of speeds. These wheels would be turning really fast. It's all counterweighted. Really quite a marvel of engineering for its time.
Gotcha. And then what came after this?
Well, of course, after locomotives like this, literally comes the diesel.
The diesel. All right, well, let's go see it. And we really are seeing railroad history come alive here today. We moved from the steam engine to the diesel locomotive. Tell me about it.
Well, steam, of course, in American railroading is what we all still seem to associate with the railroad. But as a practical matter, starting in the 30s, we began to bring aboard the technology of the diesel engine, which then generated electricity to run motors. And it was lighter weight, and ultimately it was going to propel us a lot faster along the rails to pull streamlined trains such as this dining car you see here from the famed train, the Super Chief, which was LA to Chicago. So this locomotive happens to be from right around 1950, but locomotives that looked pretty darn similar were pulling this other train in 1937, and they were pulling trains right up into the beginnings of Amtrak. If you will, this is when the passenger train assumed its modern form. But this was the peak of U.S. travel, and it certainly was the peak of speed on U.S. railroads.
And you see these intricate cars, these dining cars, the passenger cars we walk through, and you see where people slept on these cars. You even have one that moves when you go through it. Boy, talk about an interactive experience. This is it.
Absolutely. I mean, again, our job is to bring this history alive here at the museum. With all of these folks going through today, their parents or their grandparents probably even traveled by train. So much of that gets handed down in our setting here. Many kids today have never even ridden a train, but someone in their family usually has. And so it's really intergenerational learning. We certainly hope that it's also going to rekindle not only the desire to look back at history, see how important railroads have been, but to think about the possibilities that railroads offer as we look for solutions to greening our world. This is not what it appears to be. It is very much an authentic, solid gold spike. It's engraved exactly the same way, with a couple of exceptions, as the one that traveled to Promontory and became that last spike driven into the very last tie.
And you call this the lost spike.
But this is the lost spike, exactly, because this one was cast by the same person at the same foundry in San Francisco, engraved at the same jewelry company, but it was held as a keepsake by that family. And literally up until just a few years ago, they decided they wanted to see it go on display for the public to admire, and so it's ended up here.
Thank you so much for having us here to the California State Railroad Museum. Boy, I learned so much today, so thank you.
Our pleasure. It's really a treasure for all the people as part of our state park system too.
Absolutely, come out and see it. And here we are inside the California Automobile Museum in Sacramento. It really is a walk down memory lane and very much a people story. One of the docents, Bill Millard, is here to tell us all about it. Good to see you, Bill.
Good to meet you, Rob.
Thanks for having us. And I'll tell you, everywhere you look, you see a stunning piece of what I consider art. Do you?
Indeed. I fall in love just about every time I come in here.
Yeah, with a different car probably every time, too. I understand they're standing next to a very famous one right here. Tell me about this one.
This one belonged to A.P. Giannini, the founder of Bank of America. He liked to be driven around in style, obviously.
Clearly, yeah. What kind of car is this?
This is a K Lincoln.
A K Lincoln.
One of the big ones.
How old?
1933.
So we moved from one that's very famous to this one over here. What is this car? It's a beauty.
1931 Chrysler 8 Roadster.
So I'm hearing a lot of the 30s in this area. Are all of these cars from that era that we're standing in?
Some 20s, mostly 30s, yes.
20s and 30s. Even during the Depression.
The Depression caused a lot of this because the companies that made the luxury cars were not selling the cars as they should because people couldn't afford them. They were trying to outshine each other.
Oh, really?
With beautiful body styles, just wonderful stuff. We had the technology down to where they were pretty reliable. You depended on the car to get you there, and it would.
Where you see people walking around here and they're just smiling and staring at these cars. How many cars are here?
About 150 to 160, depending on.
And most of them
the day.
work.
Most of them work.
All right, well, we've got a lot to see, so let's go check it out.
Indeed.
Come on, Bill. It's hard really to pinpoint the first car because you get a lot of different answers and variations, but this is something special. It's a quadricycle, Henry Ford's first car, correct?
Yes, it is.
Tell me about it.
Well, it had taken him from about 1893 to 1896 to get the engine developed and this car built, strictly for purposes of proving his concept. Henry Ford, early in the game, had the notion that everyone should be able to drive a car.
And you can see here, it's interesting, see the bricks that are busted out on the wall over there? When Henry Ford built this in his garage, he wasn't thinking about how he's going to get it out of there, so he had to bust the bricks out to get the car out.
Yes. Yeah, irritated the landlord, something awful, until the landlord got a ride, and then he made the door bigger.
This is the hot rod era, era that really got popular after World War II. We're now talking with docent Ken Jordan. Good to see you, Ken.
Nice to see you, Rob.
And so why did this type of car boom after World War II?
Well, World War II ended, the soldiers and everyone wanted to just get the frustrations out of their mind, out of their bodies, and they found that, the late 20s, early 30s Ford's Roadsters were inexpensive and easily modified into something that could go fast.
How fast would these cars have gone?
Well, at that time, I had a 40 Ford Coupe that I took at 134 miles an hour.
You're kidding.
So, and it only had minor modifications.
No wonder they're called hot rods. Here we have an exhibit about what you might have gone to Yosemite in about 100 years ago.
That's true. What the cars you see here are typical for the time period that you would have seen on the road. This is what you would have driven into Yosemite to your campsite, or if you stayed at Camp Wawona, typical of what was available.
So this area is called the parking lot. Lots of different cars here, a lot of them from the 50s.
Right. These are typical of what you would see in a parking lot in the 50s. Maybe not too many Corvettes, but you would see Chevys and Oldsmobiles and Buicks and Mercurys here.
Ken, so nice talking to you. We're going to go hook up with your colleague Bill over here to do some more touring here at the California Automobile Museum. We'll see you later, okay?
Thank you.
What is it about cars that strikes a chord with your heart?
It's the package to me. It's the art. It's the go fast because I'm a race fan. And it's the people stories. Millions of people stories. And I feel that the study of automobiles and automotive history is sort of like drifting toward a galaxy. There's no way you could absorb all that in a lifetime. So I'm guaranteed to be occupied the rest of my life.
Well, that's a very wonderful thing to say. It's so good to see you, Bill Millard. Thank you for having us here.
It's been fun.
It's been a lot of fun at the California Automobile Museum. What fun. Hey, check out all of our programs on my website at kvie.org/RobOnTheRoad. There you can also send me your story ideas. I'd love to hear from you. We'll see you next time, right here on Rob on the Road.
To order a DVD copy of this program, call 888-814-3923 or visit robontheroad.org.